I was finishing my postgrad that summer. It didn't go well. In fact, it was the worst summer of my life. I had moved into a fully furnished basement apartment, looking for some solitude, away from distractions. The old lady living upstairs was Mrs. Whitaker. She was sweet as lemon meringue pie. Her home was a quick jaunt to school, and the rent was unbelievable. I thought I'd hit the lottery. Then I started noticing red blotches on my legs. They itched like hell. I thought it was bed bugs. When I removed the mattress cover, I shuddered. The mattress looked like a hot chili massacre. Big brown blotches with green swirling splashes mixed with what looked like ketchup stains. The form amalgamated into what looked like the shape of a body. When I flipped the mattress onto its side, I gagged. It looked like the after effects of a car crash. I barely made it to the washroom before relieving myself of my breakfast. How could a mattress get so bad? I asked myself, bewildered. I scanned it for bed bugs, found none. Phew. One less thing to worry about. Then I spent the weekend preparing my speech to Mrs. Whitaker. How do I broach the subject of her deplorable mattress? Mrs. Whitaker laughed nonchalantly when I brought it up. "Oh, that bed is fine and dandy," she assured me. "Always has, always will be." The woman was an ocean of secrets. Most old people surround themselves with memories. Not Mrs. Whitaker. Her home was devoid of photographs of any kind. Plenty of jewelry, random knickknacks, and a TV with an antenna. But no signs of her past. Her kitchen was delectable. She wore her apron down to her knees, her wrinkled hands shielded by orange oven mitts. Before I know what's what, she's serving up freshly baked chocolate chip cookies with my name on them. I stuffed my face with chocolate goodness. The cookies were delicious. We chatted for over an hour about nothing in particular. Then I retreated to the basement to work on my assignment. It was 3 a.m. before my butt hit the bed. I'd forgotten about the soiled mattress. I awoke like a flash of lightning. My legs felt prickly. Something was crawling across them. Something big. Whatever it was, it had been nipping at my legs all night. I flung out my feet in a fit of rage, stifling a scream. Then I fumbled for the bedside light. It gets spooky dark down here at night. It took a minute for my eyes to adjust. When I checked my bed, I found no signs of bugs or creepy crawlers of any kind. Nothing. I must be losing it. I forced myself to the washroom and peed for an eternity. Then I tiptoed across the living room. Finally, I reached my bed. I searched the bed sheets like a detective, including the pillowcases. Checked under the bed twice. Nothing. Then I heard a noise coming from the bathroom. Hello? I asked, not recognizing my own voice. Silence. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I crawled under the covers, ignoring the icy thoughts crowding my mind. I left the bedside light on. Sleep came, but came slowly, like an old coffee maker that refuses to release its precious juice. The following week was a disaster. Chuck, my best friend, was quick to judge. "Yo, you look like garbage," he told me in between sips from a styrofoam cup. I laughed and told him to go take a leap off of a tall building. I wasn't ready to divulge my sullied little secret. It's just a dirty mattress, I reminded myself. If I hadn't removed the cover, I'd be none the wiser. But I did. I saw what lies beneath. The spots on my legs worsened. They itched tirelessly. Sleep was impossible. I've always been a light sleeper, a curse as any light sleeper can attest to. Consequently, my bloodshot eyes drooped to my knees. I felt miserable. I looked worse. If I didn't get a good night's sleep, and soon, I was in trouble. Not surprisingly, I'd fallen behind in my studies. This alone was enough to induce a lifetime of anxiety. My mother was going to kill me if I flunked out of school. My final assignment, worth 70% of my final mark, was due in 3 weeks. Things got worse. One night I heard something slithering across the floor. I snapped awake, and from the corner of my eye I saw a strange shape slithering into the washroom. "Just my imagination," I said, rubbing my eyes. And then I heard the toilet water splash. I spilled out of bed, hitting my head on the night table, and saw stars. For a moment, my mind and body shut down. Apparently, they were on a leave of absence. Dust bunnies as big as New York rats greeted me from under the bed. I grimaced. Then I noticed a trail of sickly green slime, with red dots leading towards the toilet. "Hello?" I asked, knowing full well this question was in vain. In reality, I was giving whatever it was time to escape. Out of sight, out of mind, as they say. Finally, after an undisclosed amount of time, I forced myself off the floor and puttered to the washroom. I shrieked. Blood was leaking from the toilet seat, dripping dime-sized drops onto the cold linoleum floor. Lots of blood. Easily a pint's worth. The throne was as red as the devil's right hand. It was gruesome. I fetched some towels and tried soaking up the mess. I was elbow deep in grime. The toilet seat refused to cooperate. It kept sliding from side to side. All the while, my face leaked fresh tears into the rouge-tinted water. Plunk, plunk, plunk. Finally, 3 towels and 2 rolls of teepee later, the gory mess was gone. By now, it was 6 a.m. Too tired to sleep, I brewed some coffee and went to my desk, ready to work on my assignment. Work never came. Instead, I searched up bedbugs, night critters, midnight monsters, and a plethora of demons, ogres, and unusual enemies. Each search produced scarier results. By the time I finished, it was well past noon, and I'd skipped my classes. My mind was in shambles. I needed to get to the bottom of this before I flunked out of school. I should check the mattress again, I told myself tepidly. I ripped off the covers. There's not enough alcohol in the world to make me forget the horror I saw. The corpse-sized incrustation had turned a darker hue. The crepuscular cracks running along its side more vivid. But that's not what freaked me out the most. What made me want to crawl into a hole and never come out was the splotches of dried blood sullying the entire mattress. In the center was a blood-soaked stain, a black splotch that resembled a spider. It was pulsing, like a beating heart. Exactly the spot where I slept. The mattress was alive. I stood transfixed, staring at the beating heart, unsure of what to make of it. And then I panicked. I was about to call my mother in hopes of her inevitable advice, but stopped myself. My parents were going through a sticky divorce. Did I really want to worry her? My father lived 1,000,000 miles away and was preoccupied with his work. He'd tell me to figure it out myself. Honestly, I wouldn't blame him. I'm not a kid anymore. The scabs on my legs were infected. Pink patches of pestilence skittered up my legs like snakes. Any more scratching, I'd rip the skin right off. To make matters worse, my studies were in jeopardy, plus I was broke. Buying a new bed was out of the question, and even if I did, I couldn't toss out old Mrs. Whittaker's bed. What would I tell her? If this was last year, I'd simply move in with Chuck. But sadly, that's no longer an option. He's shacked up with his girlfriend who hates me. She hates everyone, but still. I was running out of options. I searched up rooms for rent, but came up empty-handed. All the good places were taken. The rest were out of my price range. I was searching for ghosts. Eventually, after a week of no sleep, I grew weary and succumbed to my fatigue. At some point in the night, the mattress moaned. Then it released a vile odor, like a corpse stuffed with cheese. I swallowed a mouthful of vomit. The mattress was leaking. Something evil was being ejected. It clasped onto my legs and tried to pull me under. I kicked like a mule until whatever it was released me. Then I raced to the kitchen and found a knife. It was as dull as my depleted sense of humor, but it would have to do. I crept closer to the mattress, white-knuckling the knife. The mattress was bobbing up and down like a boiling pot of stew. It was making awful noises like a heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. I stopped dead in my tracks, sweat stinging my eyes. The bed belched. The smell was putrid. The knife fell from my hand and landed with a clunk. The mattress jerked, then it went still, and the basement fell under a blanket of gloom. Grudgingly, never taking my eyes off the bed, I reached down and picked up the knife. It felt like an anvil. The knife stayed pointed at the disfigured stain on the mattress for an uncomfortable amount of time. Finally, after the mattress monster failed to return, I put the knife away and sighed. Too scared to shower, I ran a comb through my hair, freshened up as best I could, then walked to school. After hitting up the cafeteria, I planned on seeing the nurse about my rash, once and for all. I kept to myself. The last thing I wanted was company. Well, a voice crept up from behind me. We decided to show up for a change. It was Chuck. Behind him was Tasha, his girlfriend. Noticing my bags, around my eyes, and the paleness of my face, she rolled her eyes and quickly looked away. Let's go, she snapped. Chuck patted my shoulder, then the pair disappeared into the crowded cafeteria. I put my head on the cafeteria table and closed my eyes. The mattress appeared to be my mind's eye. Was it really alive? Can't be. It's just my overactive imagination. A lifetime of watching horror flicks was coming back to haunt me. I sauntered towards the school's medical center, but didn't enter. I chickened out. The last thing I wanted was for someone to poke and prod my flaky skin. They'd start asking questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Not yet, anyways. Instead, I returned home, where I was greeted by Mrs. Whittaker. "Oh, there you are, Cameron," she said, carrying a tray of steaming biscuits. My tummy grumbled. Instead of bringing up the elephant in the room, or dare I say the monster in the mattress, I stuffed my face with warm biscuits, washing them down with a tall glass of milk. Whenever I tried to bring up the stingy subject, she would go off about the weather, or her baking, or how her backyard still needs mowing. Not once did she mention her past. We spent the evening watching old reruns of outdated television. By 9 o'clock, Mrs. Whittaker was fast asleep on her favorite reclining chair. Against my better judgment, I sneaked into her bedroom, keeping as quiet as a corpse. Again, I was struck by the oddity of her lack of photographs. Her room was a mixture of old lady perfume and mold. Everything was neat and tidy. Mostly old furniture devoid of purpose. Beside her single bed, next to the old sewing machine, was a treasure chest. It was the size of a casket. I inched closer, feeling like the world's worst person. But I did it anyways. I was desperate. Mrs. Whitaker mumbled and turned on her side. I bolted upright. My blood turned cold. I stole a quick glance over my shoulder. Although she was facing me, her eyes remained shut. The floorboard creaked as I crept ever closer. I took a deep breath. Then with 2 large strides, I reached the treasure chest. It was cracked oak with gold markings carved into its hinges. A faded red strip ran along its side. The rusted lock was battered beyond belief. With shaky hands, I gripped the lock. It was cold and clammy. With one strong pull, the lock fell effortlessly to the floor. I said a silent prayer. Then I opened the box. I gasped and slammed the lid shut and beelined it for the basement. The basement greeted me like a hostage. My mind was in shambles. One thing was for certain. My life was in danger. The treasure chest told me so. Dust and bones, that's what I saw. The trunk was stuffed with the bones of the dead. And the smell was atrocious. My mind went into lockdown. Alcohol. That's what I need. I fetched a bottle of wine my mother had given me and uncorked it. The sound set off a series of silent alarms throughout my body. At first, I didn't know what to do. I don't typically drink red wine, but exceptions can be made. I drank the entire bottle in under an hour, chatting to myself like a deranged lunatic. I should scoot upstairs and put the old lady's room back in order, I whispered to myself in between gulps. I pondered this for a considerable length of time, stealing sips from the bottle. Ultimately, I stayed where I was. Fear had stolen over me. I wasn't going anywhere. Having a low tolerance for alcohol, I quickly became inebriated. At some point after finishing the bottle, I crawled my way under the bedsheets and crashed. I awoke in the morning with an ear-splitting headache. My legs were burning. The rash had spread to my thighs, stopping just below my privates. Both my hands were covered in itchy red spots. When I sunk my nails into the inflamed skin, blood oozed out, and the pain was insidious. I flew out of bed, hurried to the toilet, and vomited. My reflection in the mirror wasn't encouraging. I was ghost white with bloodshot eyes that fell past my knees. I looked away. That's when I noticed the trail of mucus slinking towards my bed like a slaughtered snail. That was the final straw. I texted my mother telling her I was dropping out of school. I could finish my postgrad in the fall. I was still young. Time, as they say, was on my side. My mother called me back straight away. She wanted none of this. But once she heard the distress in my voice, she sent money for a bus ticket home. I packed up my belongings like my life depended on it. It didn't take long, seeing as I owned next to nothing. Just my laptop, some clothes, and an array of overpriced textbooks as big as my current crisis. I checked the bus schedule. The next bus wasn't due for hours. Something crashed upstairs. Mrs. Whitaker was swearing like a trucker on amphetamines. My mind shattered. She knew. I raced upstairs, rushing for the front door. But she was blocking the exit. She was standing a mere 5'0". It was an incredible sight to behold. Her face scurried into a scowl, the purple veins on her neck pulsated, her ghost-white hair in disarray. "Cameron," she said in a quaking voice, "you've been a bad boy." She had a gun. Her Colt single-action army looked as old as the stains on Mattress. Her deadpan eyes told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going anywhere. Not alive, anyway. Words failed me. All that came out was a whimper. Mrs. Whitaker snarled, baring her teeth. You aren't going anywhere, sonny boy. I've got plans for you. She motioned me into her kitchen. The clicking of her Colt made me pick up the pace. My mind insisted that her ancient pistol was as limp as a wet noodle, but I wasn't feeling lucky enough to find out. She told me to sit. I did. Immediately, my skin began to crawl. Every inch of my body was red hot. I was in rough shape. What I wouldn't do to scratch my throbbing skin, scrape my fingernails across my arms and legs to make that itch go away. Apparently that mattress had infected me. With what, I don't know. Stay put, she ordered. I detected the sweet smell of cranberry muffins coming from the oven. My stomach turned. Then it dawned on me that she may have added something to the pastries. Something sinister. By this point, all bets were off. Mrs. Whitaker returned with rope. With impossible speed, she bound my hands and legs. Before I could react, she duct-taped my mouth shut. Mrs. Whitaker grabbed a large knife from the drawer. It was a knife that could carve a bear. Then she produced a knife sharpener. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head, leaving nothing but 2 black holes. Her entire face changed into something non-human. Just a leathery mask with holes where her eyes and ears and mouth should be. Fear enveloped me. Who the hell was Mrs. Whitaker? And what's she planning on doing to me? I see you've been infected, she said in passing, sharpening her knife. Shh, 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 shh. My heart skipped a beat. My skin was boiling water. I tried scratching my legs using my feet and fell to the floor, cracking my head on the table on my way down. Mrs. Whitaker barely noticed. She gazed at her silvery blade as though it was a longtime friend, and judging by its well-worn wooden handle, it was. I managed to find my way back to the chair. Think, my mind ordered. How do I get out of this mess? I twisted my wrists and somehow made the knots even tighter. She'd done this before. She may be old as dirt, but she's no ordinary woman. She was something else completely. I remembered the trunk. How stupid was I to leave it unlocked? I shifted in my seat until I was facing her bedroom. The trunk was open, the lock lay beside it, a trail of brittle bones was scattered around her time-worn floor like discarded toys. You've discovered my trunk, she said with a simper. And soon you'll be added to my collection. Her pistol lay on the counter next to her, daring me to say otherwise. Mrs. Whitaker pointed the knife at my throat. The prickly edge of the blade glistened under the fluorescent lights. This wasn't how I wanted to die. She came at me, knife first. Someone was at the door. Mrs. Whitaker sneered. Oh, who could that be? Her voice rattled. She peeked around the corner, her face twisted in rage. Don't move, she told me. She traded her knife for the gun, then she disappeared. The door creaked. I heard a muffled voice. I recognized that voice. Chuck barged in like a one-man SWAT team. He pushed the old lady aside as he entered the kitchen, staring in bemusement as I sat bound and shackled. Mrs. Whitaker aimed the gun at the back of Chuck's head, telling him to freeze. Without a moment's notice, he drop-kicked the hag square in the head, and she crumpled like a sack of potatoes. Chuck chortled. Yo, 13 years of karate just so I could save my bro from the wicked witch of the West. I burst into tears. Not only was I in extreme discomfort as the rash traversed across my suffering skin, I was deeply embarrassed. I don't recall what happened next. All I know is that I was rushed to the hospital, where I remained for most of the summer. Word traveled fast about the bones in Mrs. Whitaker's trunk. The story went national. Turns out she was wanted for murder all across the nation, and had been for many years. Her notoriety spread fast. Nothing was mentioned of the mutated mattress. Some things are best unknown. Perhaps that was her hiding place, or the source of her black magic, or something different altogether, I don't know. Chuck, to this day, still teases me about it. He snapped some pics before the paramedics arrived. When the mood strikes, he'll send appalling memes of the mattress, typically around bedtime, wishing me good night. To him, this is funny. I forgave his taunting, seeing as how he saved my life. Turns out my worried sick mother messaged him asking him to come check on me. Good thing. Otherwise I would have ended up in Mrs. Whitaker's treasure chest. Or worse, the mattress. Mrs. Whitaker vanished. Her holding cell was empty when the guards arrived the following morning. Not one camera caught a glimpse of her sneaking away. This isn't the last of Mrs. Whitaker. I can assure you that. She'll be back. I wonder where she'll appear next. Some old mattress would be my guess. It could be the mattress you're sleeping on right now. Gross, huh? Let this be a lesson to you. Next time you find yourself sleeping on some anonymous mattress, you'd best beware. Something evil may be living in it. Mrs. Whitaker, perhaps. Tonight's story was written by Marcus Starr. Marcus is a very talented author who also posts on Reddit No Sleep under the username CallMeStarr with 2 R's. So you can check out his work on Reddit. He's also got a book available on Amazon called NORA'S Curse, which is an excellent book. I've had a chance to read it, and I highly recommend checking out his book if you'd like to support his work and support him as an author. I'll include a link in the description below, and I encourage you all to check it out. Thanks for listening to the story today, everyone, and please join me again. I post every other day at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, thanks. Please like, subscribe, comment. It really helps out the channel when you guys do that, and I'll see you again next time. Have a great night.